In 65 AD, the Roman Emperor Nero sent a final order to the richest philosopher in the empire. Not a debate, not a warning. A sentence. Seneca received it, sat down with his closest friends, and spent his last hours doing exactly what he had done every single day of his life. Talking about money, time, and what it actually means to build something that lasts. Calm, focused, completely in control. That is not normal. That is the result of a system. Seneca was not just a philosopher. He owned multiple estates across the Roman Empire. He managed investments across provincial economies with a precision that modern portfolio managers would recognize immediately. And while doing all of that, he wrote a series of letters to his friend Lucilius that contained something nobody was supposed to notice. 7 financial principles so specific and so psychologically precise that high performers across the world are quietly using them right now. Not because they are ancient, because they work. You came here for 7 lessons. So let's get straight to the first one. And pay close attention, because it is going to permanently change the way you think about your own time. Lesson 1, stop selling time. Start buying it back. Seneca opened his very first letter to Lucilius with a line that has no equivalent in any modern financial book. In Letters on Ethics, Letter 1, he wrote, "Vindica te tibi," reclaim yourself for yourself. And then he immediately connected that idea to something shockingly practical. Time. He told Lucilius that every man around him was hemorrhaging the most valuable asset he possessed, and doing it voluntarily, without resistance, without even noticing. Not money, time. And he made a distinction that most people in 65 AD and most people today completely miss. He said that some hours are taken from you by force. Obligations, emergencies, other people's demands. Some hours slip away through neglect, the slow leak of distraction and procrastination. And some hours are simply lost, handed over willingly to things that return nothing. He told Lucilius to account for all 3, because the man who cannot account for where his time goes cannot account for where his wealth goes either. Here is where it becomes financial. Seneca was one of the first minds in recorded history to articulate what modern economists call opportunity cost, not as an abstract concept, but as a daily practice. Every hour you spend working inside a system that someone else controls is an hour you are not spending building something that compounds for you. Every year you delay building income that does not require your physical presence is a year of compounding you will never recover. The wealthiest people in the modern world did not get there by working more hours. They got there by engineering situations where their money worked hours they were not working. Warren Buffett has said openly that his wealth is the result of starting early and letting time do what time does. Seneca said the same thing 2,000 years earlier, except he said it more urgently. He said most men only begin to live when it is time to stop. The question Seneca would ask you right now is not how much money you made last year. It is how many hours last year did you buy back for yourself? Because that number, not your salary, not your net worth, is the real measure of your financial progress. Before you move to Lesson 2, sit with that question seriously. Because Lesson 2 is going to show you the counterintuitive practice that the highest performers use to make sure they never panic when markets collapse, careers shift, or everything they built gets tested. Lesson 2, the voluntary discomfort that makes you unbreakable. Most people spend their entire financial lives trying to avoid discomfort. Better insurance, bigger emergency funds, safer investments, more stable jobs. And there is nothing wrong with any of that. But Seneca identified something that none of those things can give you, and that no amount of financial security can replace. The ability to function clearly when everything goes wrong anyway. He called the practice meditatio malorum, the deliberate rehearsal of adversity. Once a month, Seneca would voluntarily strip away his comforts. Simple food, basic clothing, No servants, no luxuries, none of the material conditions his wealth could provide. Not as punishment, not as performance, as training. He wrote about this in Letters on Ethics, letter 18, telling Lucilius to set aside a fixed number of days to practice poverty. His exact argument was precise and unsentimental. He said that a man who has never experienced scarcity is permanently vulnerable to the fear of it, and a man who is afraid of losing what he has will make every major financial decision from that fear, whether he realizes it or not. That is not philosophy. That is behavioral finance written 2,000 years before the field existed. Modern research on investor behavior shows consistently that the most destructive financial decisions happen in moments of acute stress. Market crashes, unexpected job losses, sudden economic shifts. The people who make the worst decisions in those moments are not the least informed. They are the most emotionally unprepared. They have never rehearsed the feeling of loss, so when loss arrives, their nervous system overrides their judgment. Seneca's practice eliminates that vulnerability at the root. Tim Ferriss, in his 2017 TED Talk, introduced millions of people to a modern version of this practice and called it fear setting. He credited Seneca directly. The exercise is simple. Define clearly what the worst realistic outcome of your current financial situation looks like. Then ask yourself 2 questions. Could you survive it? And what would you do first if it happened? The moment you can answer both questions calmly, the fear loses its grip on your decisions. The highest performers do not have better luck than everyone else. They have rehearsed losing well enough that losing no longer controls them. That is what makes them dangerous in moments when everyone else freezes. Lesson 3 is going to take this even further. Because Seneca made a distinction about wealth itself that Wall Street has never had any financial incentive to teach you. And once you understand it, the entire way you measure your own financial progress is going to shift. Lesson 3. Wealth is not what you own. It is what you can afford to lose. Seneca watched some of the richest men in Rome live in a state of permanent anxiety. Men with more land, more gold, and more political power than most people could imagine, who could not sleep, could not think clearly, and could not make a single decision without calculating what it might cost them. He studied them the way a doctor studies a patient, and his diagnosis was precise. They were not wealthy. They were possessed by their possessions. In Letters on Ethics, letter 4, Seneca wrote that no man can be truly rich who is afraid of losing what he has. Because the moment fear of loss governs your decisions, you are no longer in control of your wealth. Your wealth is in control of you. He called this the great inversion, the point at which accumulation stops creating freedom and starts creating a new and more sophisticated form of imprisonment. Here is the financial principle underneath that observation. Seneca made a clear distinction between 2 Latin concepts: possessio, which is ownership, and libertas, which is freedom. His argument was that these 2 things are not the same, are not automatically connected, and can in fact move in completely opposite directions. You can accumulate more possessio every year and have less libertas every year at the same time. And if you are measuring your financial progress only by what you own, you will never see that happening until it is too late. The metric he was pointing to is what modern financial strategists call margin. Not profit margin, life margin. The distance between what you need to survive and what you actually have. The wider that distance, the more optionality you carry into every decision you make. The narrower it is, the more every financial decision becomes a defensive move instead of a strategic one. Morgan Housel, in The Psychology of Money, makes essentially the same argument when he writes about the difference between being rich and being wealthy. Rich is visible. Wealthy is the money not spent, the options preserved, the decisions not forced. Seneca had that framework 2,000 years before Housel put it into a best-selling book. The people who survived the 2008 financial crisis without permanent damage were not the ones with the most assets. They were the ones with the most margin, the ones who could afford to lose something without losing everything. That survivability, that structural resilience, is what Seneca was describing when he talked about libertas. And it is the single most underrated metric in personal finance today. Lesson 4 is where this gets uncomfortable, because Seneca is going to force you to look at every financial opportunity you are currently saying yes to and ask a question about it that most high performers have never been taught to ask. Lesson 4. The hidden cost of every yes you say to money. Seneca was offered power repeatedly. Political positions, imperial appointments, opportunities that would have multiplied his influence and his wealth significantly. He refused most of them, and the people around him thought he was making a mistake. From the outside, it looked like he was leaving money on the table. From the inside, he was doing something far more sophisticated. He was calculating a cost that most people never calculate. In Letters on Ethics, Letter 1, Seneca wrote that every time you give your time to something, you are permanently removing it from everything else. Not temporarily, permanently. That hour is gone. That year is gone. And if what you gave it to did not align with where you were trying to go, you did not just lose time, you lost direction. And losing direction, Seneca argued, is the most expensive mistake a person can make because it compounds in reverse. Every year spent moving the wrong way is not a neutral year. It is a year that makes the right destination harder to reach. This is where the financial application cuts deep. The standard advice in career and wealth building is to say yes to good opportunities. And that advice sounds correct until you understand what Seneca understood. Good opportunities are not the problem. Good opportunities that are not your opportunities are the problem. Because they carry the same cost as bad opportunities, they consume your time, your energy, your focus, and your compounding capacity, but they are much harder to refuse because they feel responsible and ambitious from the outside. Warren Buffett has said that the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything. Charlie Munger built his entire investment philosophy around inversion, identifying what destroys value before identifying what creates it. Both of them were describing, in financial language, exactly what Seneca described in philosophical language 2,000 years earlier. Every yes you say to money has a hidden price tag. That price tag is not paid in dollars. It is paid in the opportunities you can no longer pursue, the focus you can no longer bring to your actual priorities, and the compounding you interrupted to chase something that looked good but was not yours. The question Seneca would ask you right now is not whether the opportunity in front of you is good. It is whether it is good for where you are specifically trying to go. Because those are two completely different questions, and most people only ever ask the first one. Lesson 5 is going to reveal the deepest irony in Seneca's entire financial life. Because the man who built one of the greatest fortunes in the Roman world never once made the accumulation of that fortune his primary objective. And that is precisely why he succeeded where so many others failed. Lesson 5. Why Seneca never chased money and ended up with more of it. There is a pattern that runs through the financial lives of the most successful wealth builders in history. It is counterintuitive enough that most people dismiss it when they first encounter it, and consistent enough that dismissing it is a serious mistake. The pattern is this: the people who accumulate the most lasting wealth are almost never the people who made wealth accumulation their central objective. Seneca was the clearest example of this pattern in the ancient world. He wrote about it directly in Letters on Ethics, Letter 2, telling Lucilius that a man who is everywhere is nowhere. His argument was about focus, but the financial implication was precise. When your primary objective is money itself, your decision-making becomes reactive. Every market movement, every economic shift, every opportunity that promises a faster return pulls you off course because the course was never clearly defined beyond the money itself. You end up chasing signals instead of building systems. Seneca's primary objective was never wealth. It was ratio. Clear, disciplined thinking applied consistently over time. Wealth was what happened as a result. This is not a motivational refrain. It is a structural observation about how compounding actually works at the level of human decision-making. When your objective is a process rather than an outcome, your decisions become consistent. Consistent decisions applied over long periods of time produce compounding. Compounding produces wealth. The sequence is not reversible. You cannot start with wealth as the objective and work backwards to the consistent process, because the wealth objective introduces too much emotional noise into every decision along the way. Warren Buffett has described his investment approach in almost identical terms. He is not trying to get rich. He is trying to make good decisions. The wealth is the mathematical result of good decisions made consistently over decades. Charlie Munger said directly that he has never met a wise person who did not read constantly, meaning the process of building judgment was always the objective, never the financial outcome that judgment eventually produced. Seneca wrote the same framework in Letters on Ethics, Letter 5, when he told Lucilius to pursue the things that produce a good life, not the things that look like a good life from the outside. The distinction sounds philosophical. The financial consequences of ignoring it are entirely practical and entirely measurable. The people in your industry who seem to accumulate wealth effortlessly are not lucky. They shifted their objective from the outcome to the process early enough that compounding had time to do what compounding does. And they made that shift because something, a book, a mentor, a moment of clarity, showed them what Seneca documented 2,000 years ago. Lesson 6 is the one that separates the people who understand Seneca intellectually from the people who actually use him. Because the asset he identified as the foundation of everything, the one asset he said no external force could ever take from you, is not what most people expect to hear. Lesson 6. The one asset Seneca said nobody can ever take from you. In every financial crisis in recorded history, one pattern repeats without exception. People lose money, lose property, lose positions, lose businesses. And then, within a generation, some of them build it all back. Not always the same people, not always in the same industry, but the rebuilding happens with a consistency that cannot be explained by luck or by access to capital alone. Seneca identified what that pattern was built on, and he did it with a precision that took modern behavioral science centuries to catch up to. In Letters on Ethics, Letter 90, he wrote that the only possession a man carries through every circumstance, every reversal, every external crisis, is the quality of his own thinking. He called it ratio. Not intelligence in the raw sense, not talent, not education, as an institution delivers it. The disciplined capacity to evaluate a situation clearly, remove emotional distortion from the analysis, and make a decision that serves your actual long-term interest rather than your immediate emotional state. He argued that every other asset, land, money, position, reputation, exists outside you and can therefore be removed by forces outside you. Ratio exists inside you, and because it exists inside you, it is the only asset that compounds without any external dependency whatsoever. Here is what that means financially. The investors who recovered fastest after the 2008 collapse were not the ones who had the most cash reserves going in. They were the ones whose thinking was most disciplined under pressure. They could look at a market that was collapsing and evaluate it without the emotional noise that was destroying everyone else's decision-making in real time. That clarity, that ratio, allowed them to see opportunities where others saw only catastrophe. And the positions they took in 2009 produced returns that defined the next decade of their financial lives. Ray Dalio built Bridgewater, the largest hedge fund in the world, on a single foundational principle he calls radical open-mindedness, the deliberate, systematic practice of removing ego and emotional attachment from every analysis. He has written extensively about how that practice, not any specific investment strategy, is the actual source of Bridgewater's long-term performance. Seneca called the same practice ratio and wrote about it in letters to a friend 2,000 years before Dalio built a $50 billion fund on top of it. The most important investment you will ever make is not in a stock, not in real estate, not in a business. It is in the quality of your own thinking, because every other investment you make passes through that thinking first. And the quality of what passes through determines the quality of what comes out on the other side. Seneca invested in ratio every single day. He read, he wrote, he reflected. He deliberately sought out perspectives that challenged his existing conclusions. He treated the maintenance of clear thinking as a non-negotiable daily practice, the same way a serious athlete treats physical training, not occasionally, not when it was convenient, every day without exception. That daily practice is available to you right now at zero financial cost, with a return on investment that no market instrument can match. Lesson 7 is the one that ties everything together. And it is the reason this channel exists. Because what Seneca discovered about progress, about the invisible accumulation that precedes every visible result, is the most powerful financial idea he ever documented. And almost nobody is talking about it. Lesson 7. The compound effect Seneca discovered before anyone had a name for it. There is a moment in the life of every serious wealth builder when something shifts. The work does not change. The discipline does not change. The daily practice does not change. But the results suddenly stop being invisible. What was accumulating silently for years becomes undeniable all at once. And the people watching from the outside call it an overnight success because they only saw the moment of visibility, not the years of invisible compounding that made it inevitable. Seneca had a name for the process that produces that moment. He called it perfectus. He wrote about it in Letters on Ethics, letter 77, describing it not as a dramatic transformation, but as a gradual, continuous, largely invisible movement in a specific direction. He told Lucilius that most men abandon the process precisely because they cannot see it working. They apply discipline for weeks or months, observe no dramatic external change, and conclude that the process is not producing results. What they are actually observing, Seneca argued, is the nature of compounding itself. The results are there. They are simply not yet visible. This is not a metaphor. It is a precise description of how compound interest works mathematically. The most counterintuitive fact about compound growth is that the majority of the result arrives in the final period, not the early periods. $1 compounding at 10% annually is worth $1.10 after 1 year. After 10 years, it is worth $2.59. After 30 years, it is worth $17.45. The first 10 years produced $1.49. The final 10 years produced $10.65. The process was identical throughout. The results were not, because compounding is not linear. It is exponential. And exponential growth is invisible until it is not. Seneca understood this about human development 2,000 years before mathematicians formalized it about money. He applied perfectus to wisdom, to character, to the daily practice of clear thinking. But the structure is identical to what Warren Buffett applied to capital, what James Clear applied to habits and atomic habits, and what every serious long-term wealth builder has discovered independently across every era of financial history. The mechanism does not change. Consistent inputs, applied without interruption over sufficient time, produce results that appear sudden, but were never sudden at all. The reason most people never experience that moment of visible breakthrough is not that they lack intelligence, capital, or opportunity. It is that they abandon the process during the invisible phase. They stop compounding before compounding has had enough time to become undeniable. Seneca's final instruction to Lucilius on this subject was direct. He said to measure progress not by what is visible today, but by the distance between who you were and who you are becoming. Because that distance, accumulated consistently over time, is the only honest measure of perfectus. And perfectus, applied without interruption, is the only honest path to everything you are trying to build. That is what the Stoic compound is built on. Not motivation, not tactics. The oldest and most reliable compounding mechanism ever documented. The one Seneca was writing about before the Roman Empire reached its peak. And the one that is available to you starting today, regardless of where you are starting from. Now let's bring all 7 lessons together, because the conclusion of this video contains the one question that will determine whether what you just heard changes anything in your life at all. What are you compounding starting today? 7 lessons. 1 philosopher. 2,000 years of distance between his world and yours. And yet every single principle you just heard is operating in your financial life right now, whether you are applying it deliberately or not. Time is compounding. The question is whether it is compounding for you or against you. Your tolerance for discomfort is either expanding or shrinking. The margin between what you need and what you have is either growing or closing. Every yes you say is eliminating something else. Your process is either building toward a specific destination or reacting to whatever arrives next. The quality of your thinking is either improving through daily practice or degrading through daily neglect. And your perfectus, your invisible accumulation, is either moving in a direction you chose or in a direction you defaulted into. Seneca did not write his letters for philosophers. He wrote them for a man who was trying to figure out how to live and build well inside a world that was complicated, unpredictable, and indifferent to his ambitions. That description has not changed in 2,000 years. The single question he would leave you with is not about your portfolio, your income, or your career trajectory. It is simpler and more important than any of those things. What are you compounding starting today? If this video gave you one idea that shifted something, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the Stoic Compound for new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if you want to go deeper, the next video is already waiting for you. Seneca said it best in Letters on Ethics, Letter 1. Begin at once to live, and count each day as a separate life. The compounding starts now.